Are you a new Spirit Island player and you find yourself constantly running out of elements trying to cast your innate ability, but you just never have enough? We've got a tip that might help you with that, along with several others that you might be getting wrong. Here in just a second.
Hey folks, it's Wendy and Jeremy with Elevation Games, and today we're going to be showing you 6 rules in Spirit Island that you're probably getting wrong, plus a bonus tip at the end.
Yeah, rules that can unintentionally make the game harder than it needs to be.
That's right.
We've heard from a lot of people that they find this game, one, really hard to learn, and 2, really hard to win.
And hard to teach.
Yeah. So we thought we'd go over some tips that might help you do both of those.
Yeah, so the first rule that you're probably getting wrong is the way that your boards are set up. So Spirit Island comes with very specific setups based on the number of players that you're playing with. So if you're playing with 2 players, you have your 2 boards connected on the long ends, with the ocean sitting at 10 and 11 o'clock and 3 and 4 o'clock on your board. When you're playing with 3 players, your seas or your oceans are going to be sitting at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 7 o'clock. And then when you're playing with 4, your oceans or your seas are actually going to be on the outermost left and right edge of your board. We usually connect ours on the short end instead of on the long end, and so it makes it a lot harder to move from one end of the island to the other when you're trying to spread your presence out. So if you make sure just in your initial setup that you're setting your boards up the recommended way, it makes it a lot easier to move across the island and to defend against the invaders. Rule number 2 that you probably are getting wrong is the cascading of Blight. A lot of folks think that when your Blight cascades that it goes to every adjacent area, but it doesn't. It actually just goes to 1.
Yeah, this is one I got wrong frequently, and made me, frankly, more afraid of Blight than I should have been. It's still not good. You still want to prevent it, but it's not quite the catastrophe that I usually thought it was, where, you blight a space with Blight already in it, and you're going to blight every single space around it. Nope, it only does it to 1.
Yeah, so the number 3 rule that you're probably getting wrong is that the elements that you produce with the cards that you play and with uncovering on your board are additive. They are not consumed. So if you need say 2 mountains, and you use that on one side of your innate ability, those 2 mountains are still available for consumption on the other side of your innate abilities as well. So you don't take it off the board like you would in Gloomhaven when you produce those elements. You actually just produce them, and you can use them as many times as you need. They're there for your use.
Yeah, and importantly, your innate powers are also cumulative because of that.
That's
so right. When you look at these, you've got sort of a level 1 that's the lowest tier version that costs the least, and then another one above it, and another one above that. If you have the elements to do that very top level 1, you also get to do the ones below it.
That's right. There are some spirits that don't allow you to do that, but it is actually specified on your innate ability. It will say or. If it doesn't say or, where it's forcing you to choose which one you're going to use, then you can use each one cumulatively as long as you have the elements for that. And in the same vein as the elements being additive instead of consumptive is that the elements that you produce are for you to use. So if I produce a mountain again, and Jeremy needs that mountain, Jeremy is not allowed to take that mountain or use that mountain that I produced. Rule number 4 that you're probably getting wrong is the damage that the invaders deal during their Ravage phase. So if you have a town that's going to ravage, and in that space there are Dohans and there's the land, the damage that town deals is put onto the Dohan and onto the land simultaneously. So if you have enough Dahan there to absorb all that damage, and it kills them, but you still have more left, that does not protect the land. The only thing that protects those Dahan and the land is the defend action.
Yeah. If you can stack some defensive powers on there, it's a great way to not only stop a Blight, as Wendy said, it bolsters those Dahan and keeps them from getting hit, which then allows them to survive that initial attack and then come back and deal some damage on their own. That's something a lot of new players miss. The Dahan are actually a really great way to get some bonus damage out there. They're largely defenseless unless you defend them. But if you manage to do that, they can pack a punch.
They can, and that's where if you have the ability to move those Dahan around, that's a good place to use it. If you have a lot of invaders in one space, the more Dahan you can hurt in there and then defend them, then that will allow you to then put that damage back on a lot of invaders at once.
Yeah.
That was an extra bonus tip. That's a bonus tip. The number 5 rule that you're probably getting wrong is the reclaiming of cards. So each spirit has 2 to 3 growth phases on the top that you do at the top of each round. Some of those will say reclaim 1 card, but usually it will just say reclaim cards. If you use that growth that says to reclaim your cards, you reclaim all cards in your discard pile, not just 1. If you are only supposed to get 1, then it will specify only to choose 1. That is a rule that I feel like a lot of folks get wrong. And if you find that you're fighting that growth phase, or if you're having to constantly use your reclaim cards growth instead of ones that allow you to move your presence or whatever else growths you have on there, then just make sure that you are actually reclaiming all of your cards back of your growth options. Usually that reclaim cards is the worst or the least helpful as far as moving the game along. So it's one that you don't want to have to use more frequently than you have to.
Yeah, and I just so happen, coincidentally, to be playing River Surges and Sunlight here, which is a great example. One of their presence track icons here is a reclaim 1. So when you uncover that, that means you get to reclaim 1 card every turn. But as you can see, it specifically says reclaim 1 as opposed to the growth track up here, which says reclaim cards, multiple.
That's right. So just make sure that you're not shorting yourself of your hand each round.
Yeah.
The number 6 rule that you are probably getting wrong is where explorers can go during the explore phase. Explorers can only go into lands that are adjacent to either an ocean or an existing settlement, so a city or a town. If the land that's being explored doesn't have one of those things adjacent to it, then you don't add explorers to that area.
Yeah, this can actually make things significantly easier on you. It can make parts of the island just inaccessible to the invaders, which, you know, can make a strategy of moving them around and sort of clumping them up even more powerful, given the fact that it literally just cuts them off from whole parts of the island.
That's right. The number 7 rule that you're probably getting wrong is completing the initial explore during setup. So when you get your game out, you're setting everything up, the very last step of the setup is to do an initial explore. That's before you pull your cards out, before you do anything. And it's really easy to overlook that, especially when you're getting ready to start playing. You want to grab your cards, you want to start making stuff happen, but you need to let that initial explore happen. Now, a bonus tip for especially new players is you can skip that step if you need to, just to make the game a little easier for you in those first few rounds while you're getting the hang of how everything moves. If you skip that initial explore, then you're gonna have cards in play when they come in and start exploring before they ever get to a place where they're gonna build or they're gonna ravage. And what that does for new players is just set them up for better success. It buys them a little time to understand the gameplay and keeps the game moving at an easier pace as you go along. But for more experienced players, or for players looking for a little bit more of a challenge, make sure you don't skip that initial explore. You got to always give them their chance to come in before you start playing your cards to push them back off the island.
Yeah, it's a complex game, and there's no shame in making things a little bit easier for a bunch of first-time players who are just figuring everything out. I think we might should finish off here by saying all these rules that we're explaining are true, 99% of the time, but there's always going to be exceptions. They're usually called out either on the Spirits card itself, on the card you're playing. If it doesn't follow the typical rule, the game usually tells you. But most of the time, the stuff we're laying out here is true.
That's right. There's always going to be exceptions. But one thing I really appreciate about Spirit Island is that there is a lot of thought put into the writing on these cards. And so if, for example, you're only supposed to reclaim one card, it says one card. If it doesn't say one card or specify a number, then that means take them all.
Yep.
Or if your spirit blocks certain things, then it will lay it out in very easy to understand words here, how that works. This is one game where we don't have to pull in a lot of rules judges to make calls on how things are supposed to work.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have for this.
Okay. Okay, well, if this is something you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe. We've got lots more content like this here. And we're going to be doing some more deep dives on Spirit Island specifically. So be on the lookout for those. Some more rules guides and stuff like that to help folks. Because again, we've heard from folks that they find this difficult to learn, difficult to teach. And so if we can help with that at all, it's one of our, if not our absolute favorite game of all time. So we think it's worth the effort.
Yes.
Once you get past that initial hurdle, it's absolutely worth the time you put into it.
Yes. So what are your favorite rules that you know that a lot of other folks don't? Feel free to drop those down in the comments, because I'm always excited to learn new rules for these games. There's always that thing in the back of the rule book that we forgot about. So we would love to hear what you think we missed, or what you think would be a good addition for everyone else to know.
Okay, thanks everybody.
See ya.
We'll see you next time.